The news spread like wildfire across every business journal, every headline, and every social media platform. Amelia Rothschild, the youngest female CEO of a Fortune 100 company, was dying. She had built an empire from scratch, a global tech conglomerate that had changed lives, employing thousands and shaping the future of digital communications, but her own life was slipping away before anyone could find an answer. At just 34, her body was ravaged by a rare autoimmune disorder that no doctor, no scientist, and no experimental drug could slow down. Every hospital wing she visited seemed to echo the same heartbreaking refrain, "There's nothing more we can do." The world watched, and her boardroom buzzed with whispers about succession, yet Amelia herself remained silent, carrying the weight of an empire and the dread of mortality in her tired but unbowed eyes. It seemed she was destined to become another tragic headline, a brilliant light extinguished too soon. That is, until fate crossed her path with someone who never should have been part of her world. A single father, a war veteran, and the one man whose blood carried the cure to her impossible illness. Caleb Walker never thought much about CEOs or the world of billionaires. He was too busy keeping his 9-year-old daughter, Lily, safe and happy in their modest life in a small Virginia town. After years of military service overseas, he had returned with scars on his body and wounds on his soul, struggling to build a new normal in a world that often felt foreign to him. His wife, Emily, had died in a car accident while he was deployed, and from that moment, his only mission had been to raise Lily with love, to give her the security and hope he himself no longer believed in. His days were filled with odd jobs, carpentry work, and school runs, but also with the quiet ache of loneliness that crept in during the long nights. He never sought recognition, never imagined being a hero outside the battlefield, and certainly never imagined his blood would become the key to saving one of the most powerful women in the country. The connection was pure coincidence, or perhaps destiny disguised as chance. One evening, Caleb and Lily were leaving a local community center blood drive, where he had donated simply because Lily insisted they do something good for others. She had a way of convincing him, with her bright smile and the same earnest blue eyes her mother had once looked at him with. Unbeknownst to Caleb, his blood would later be flagged as unique, carrying an extremely rare antibody that neutralized the exact autoimmune reaction destroying Amelia Rothschild's body. The medical team had never seen anything like it. They had screened thousands of donors, poured millions into research, and failed at every attempt. And yet here, in the blood of a quiet man living paycheck to paycheck, was the answer to saving the life of a woman who seemed untouchable to the rest of the world. At first, Caleb was hesitant. He had no interest in corporate wealth or the flashing cameras that descended on him once doctors confirmed the possibility. All he cared about was whether it was safe for Lily, whether this would put him in harm's way, and whether his body could even withstand repeated donations. The doctors explained that Amelia's treatment would require not just a single transfusion, but a long-term series of plasma extractions to rebuild her immune system. It would be grueling for both donor and patient, a road filled with risk, but it was the only hope she had left. Caleb looked down at Lily, who clutched his hand tightly, and he thought of Amelia, not as the billionaire CEO everyone idolized or resented, but simply as a daughter too, someone's little girl who was about to leave this world far too soon. He agreed. The first time Amelia met Caleb, she was weak, pale, and carrying herself with the dignity of someone who had accepted death but refused to beg for life. Her once commanding voice had grown soft, her body frail from the illness, yet her eyes, sharp and intelligent, studied him as if she wanted to memorize the face of the man whose blood was about to flow into her veins. Caleb had no rehearsed words, no speeches. He simply offered her a quiet nod, the kind soldiers gave before heading into battle. That silent respect, unpolished and unfiltered, touched Amelia more than any of the shallow condolences she had received from board members and business partners who cared more about her signature than her soul. The treatments began, and with them came pain, exhaustion, and uncertainty. Amelia's body initially rejected the transfusion, throwing her into fevers and seizures that terrified even the most seasoned doctors. Caleb sat outside her room through those nights, haunted by memories of battlefield comrades fighting to survive. He whispered to Lily over the phone, assuring her daddy was fine, even as he watched Amelia tremble on the brink of life and death. But then, slowly, her body began to accept his blood, to grow stronger with each passing week. The doctors marveled at the progress, calling it nothing short of a miracle, though Caleb only shook his head. To him, it wasn't a miracle. It was sacrifice, resilience, and the stubborn will to keep going, things he had lived through countless times. As Amelia's strength returned, she and Caleb began to talk. At first, their conversations were brief, practical, focused on the process. But soon, Walls began to fall. She confessed to him the crushing loneliness of power, how no one ever spoke to her without calculating what they could gain. He told her about Emily, about the guilt of surviving combat only to lose his wife back home, about the nights he woke drenched in sweat from nightmares. Amelia listened, not with pity but with the rare empathy of someone who also knew what it was to be admired by millions yet understood by no one. Their bond grew, unspoken but undeniable, weaving a thread between two lives that never should have intersected. Challenges arose beyond the hospital walls. Amelia's board of directors viewed Caleb with suspicion, questioning his motives and painting him as a potential scandal. The media swarmed him, digging into his past, sensationalizing his military service, and even intruding into Lily's school life. Caleb almost walked away, furious at the invasion and protective of his daughter's innocence. But Amelia, now strong enough to stand before her board again, defended him publicly. In a rare press conference, she declared that Caleb Walker was not only her donor but her partner in survival, a man whose quiet courage shamed the shallow greed of those questioning his integrity. That moment marked a turning point, not just for Amelia's leadership, but for Caleb himself, who realized that she saw him not as a charity case or a hero, but simply as a man worth respecting. The months of treatment turned into seasons, and with each passing day, Amelia's life was no longer measured in frail breaths but in plans for the future. She and Lily grew close, the girl bringing laughter into Amelia's sterile hospital suite, coloring her walls with drawings and calling her Miss Amelia, with innocent warmth. For Caleb, watching them together stirred feelings he had long buried, feelings of family, of hope, of something more than survival. But he resisted. He reminded himself that Amelia belonged to a world of skyscrapers and boardrooms, while he belonged to quiet streets and worn work boots. Yet love does not ask permission to bloom, and with every smile, every shared silence, every moment when Amelia's hand brushed his, the truth became harder to ignore. Their greatest challenge came when Amelia's condition relapsed suddenly, triggered by an unexpected complication. The doctors warned that this time, even Caleb's blood might not be enough. The treatment required an unprecedented level of extraction that could put his own health in danger, perhaps permanently. Amelia begged him not to do it, her newfound feelings for him battling with the fear of losing him. But Caleb, remembering all the lives he had fought to save on the battlefield and the promise he made to Lily to live with purpose, refused to abandon her. "You're not just a CEO," he told her, his voice steady. "You're a woman worth fighting for." With Lily holding his other hand, he entered the treatment room one final time. The procedure nearly broke him, leaving him pale and trembling, but it worked. Amelia's body stabilized, stronger than ever before, her immune system finally reset by the rare gift in his blood. As Caleb recovered slowly, Amelia sat by his bedside now, their roles reversed, her hand never leaving his. For the first time in years, she cried not from pain but from gratitude, whispering words she had once thought she would never speak. "You saved me, but more than that, you showed me what it means to live." Months later, Amelia returned to her company not just as a CEO but as a changed woman, carrying with her a new perspective shaped by sacrifice and love. And Caleb returned to his modest home with Lily, content to live quietly again. But their story was far from over. For Amelia visited often, not as a business icon but as a woman who had found a piece of her heart in the most unexpected place. And eventually, under the warm glow of a Virginia sunset, with Lily tugging at both their hands, she told Caleb she no longer wanted to live in two separate worlds. She wanted one world, shared with him, grounded in love, resilience, and the simple truth that life was not about empires or wealth, but about the people who made survival worth the fight. Their story became one whispered across boardrooms and kitchen tables alike, not as a fairy tale but as proof that sometimes salvation comes not from power, not from wealth, but from the quiet strength of a single soul willing to give everything. And for Amelia and Caleb, what began as blood became the bond that would carry them through every storm ahead, a love born not from convenience but from courage. Theirs was not a story of a CEO and a soldier, but of two broken hearts finding in each other the cure they never thought possible. And so, the powerful message lingered long after the headlines faded. Sometimes the greatest battles are not fought with armies or empires, but with love, sacrifice, and the willingness to save each other when the world believes all hope is lost.